So I said, well, if the bees die out and the insects all die out, the world I'm handing over to my children is going to be so different as to be completely unrecognizable. Because nutritious food, the price would be unreachable for the average man. So that got me to about 4 years ago when I was sitting in northeast England. My children were then in their late teens. And I read up a little bit more deeply than most on the insect extinction, which was underway then. We all know about this.
That quote,
and I
that very famous quote. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, well, if this is for real and the insects do die, then if you plant a crop in a field that needs pollination, you're going to find you don't get any crop. If it's not pollinated, the plant will grow, it'll flower, but no pollination, no crop. It's a really simple equation. No pollination, no crop. Not all crops are pollinated. Some are self-pollinating, some don't require pollination, etc., etc. But about 3/4, about 70% of the most nutritious foods and nuts and berries that we consume, the highest nutrient values, that all comes from plants, crops that are indeed pollinated. So I said, well, if the bees die out and the insects all die out, the world I'm handing over to my children is going to be so different as to be completely unrecognizable. Because nutritious food, the price would be unreachable for the average man. You would not be able to buy nutritious food unless, some miracle happened and the scientific community came together and made highly nutritious food, which they have not done so yet. I'm still waiting for that. So I thought, well, what if we were to instrument up a beehive and a bee colony in that beehive and pull the data out and pass the data through machine learning and see if we can teach machine learning to pick out various states of the brood nest and the bees that comprise that. So if you have a beehive and it's fully mature, it's fully grown, you'll have approximately 40,000 bees in there. One queen, the majority of the bees are workers, and there are a few thousand other bees that look after the security, and they look at the drones, is what they're called. They are the only male mating bees, and they only get an opportunity to mate once. When there's a new queen and she's not been fertilized, there is a maiden flight, and they will all of the biggest and best and strongest of the drones will manage to mate with the queen, and then you'll have a fertile queen for the next 4 or 5 years. She only needs to be fertilized once. Her equipment is incredibly different to human in terms of procreation. Bee genetics are also completely. You basically could just completely forget everything you've learned about us humans and what we understand about genetics. Bee genetics are at a completely different level. And a lot in their lives and in the colony itself, a lot in the hive mentality is actually defined by the queen. When she lays an egg, she'll say, her reproductive parts decide, okay, this is going to be a drone, this is going to be another queen, we'll have another queen. And so she sort of decides that almost automatically. But the bees that are in human management are incredibly sick. We've seen reports on this in the last 10, 15 years. There's a thing called colony collapse disorder.
CCD, yeah.
So I've dug into that, CCD, yeah. And CCD, for the most part of that last 15 years, people have been saying, we don't really know what it is. It could be insecticides, it could be neonicotinoid, which is a particular class of insecticides, really design a drug to kill insects. And you know what? Insecticides work. They kill insects. That's what the scientists designed them to do. So there's no good saying that there's anything like a bee-safe insecticide. Don't be stupid. There's no such thing. The insecticides are designed to kill insects, and that's exactly what they do. Now, it's if you dig deeply into it, you'll recognize that the money that's in big agriculture has been hushing it up. It's been insecticides is one of the major killers. There's another major killer. It's called the varroa mite. Now, if you're not a beekeeper, you may not have heard of it. But the varroa mite is a little insect. It lives its entire life cycle, but its life cycle, its breeding patterns are very tightly interwoven with the activities of the queen bee and the propagation of the hive and its well-being, raising baby bees until they hatch and become adult bees and contribute to the well-being of the hive. So what happens is when the queen, in the middle of summer, she is a veritable egg-laying machine. That's it. No gig economy here. She is the epitome of full-time employment. She can lay between 1,000 and 2,000 eggs every day. That's quite something. So the little worker bees walk around with her and they say, okay, you should put an egg in here. We've cleaned this one out. And she puts an egg in there and then she moves on and they help her to move on to the next one that they've cleaned out. Other worker bees will come behind her. And when they find a new egg in an empty cell, they'll put some royal jelly in it so that when the egg is ready, it's got something to eat. Then they seal it with wax. Now, this is key. This is important if you want to understand why the bees are dying. So it's sealed with wax. Then a day or two later, more worker bees will come on and they'll open it. The thing that happens with the varroa mite is when the queen bee has laid an egg, the varroa mite, which is only the longest dimension on this little, it's like a tick or an insect. The longest dimension is about 1.2 millimeters. It's small. You can look at a bee and see a varroa mite on it, but it's like a big period at the end of the sentence. Big full stop. Not much bigger. So she walks around after the queen, and as soon as she finds a cell with a single egg in it, she walks in now. Welcome to the world of insects. She doesn't lay one egg. She's smaller. She lays 20. And it's like an insurance policy. One of them will definitely survive. Many more will probably survive. One of them will grow teeth quicker than the others and will bite into the blood supply of the bee larva. It's a little white worm about 3 millimeters long. And from that point in time, the bee is sentenced to death a couple of ways. So it's got this little insect hanging onto its bloodstream, sucking its blood out. That's not a very nice way to go. You're going to feel weak. Your body is going to have to create more blood, which you wouldn't normally have to do. You're going to be ill. But here's the thing that really does the killing. When the varroa mite bites into the blood supply of the bee larva inherits the viral payload from the mite. So now, we know about viruses, don't we? We know what one virus can do.
Oh, it spreads?
COVID. Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
When the mite bites the bee, the viral payload is not just one virus, it's anything between 5 and 8 viruses.
Wow.
So what does a system do when it gets a virus? We know what it does. You've got an immune system. So the immune system looks at this body in the blood, it says it's a virus, marks it, then it tries and builds antibodies that can fit onto it to disable it. And it's trial and error. So it'll try one, doesn't work. Try another one, doesn't work. Try another one, doesn't work. And that's what you do. That's what your immune system does when you are infected. If it's a low dosage, you and I would probably not even notice it. You might feel slightly off. If it's a medium dosage and it's a cold virus that's got you, you might have a sniffly nose, and 2 or 3 days later you're fine. But if it's a flu virus or a really bad infection with a cold virus, you will be out of order for 2 or 3 days, and you will wish you are dead at some point in time. This is just life as we know it. This is how we work with viruses. And colds and flus don't generally kill healthy people. If you're a really old person and you've got many comorbidities, as they've become popularly called in the world of medicine post-COVID, people with comorbidities, in other words, something pretty major, one or more pretty major things wrong with their health. If they get infected with COVID or any other virus, even the flu will kill them, because their body is already fighting. So now back to the bees. This bee larva, little worm, about 3 mils long, it's now got 5 to 8 viruses. So its immune system is screaming, it's redlining, trying to build antibodies all the time and failing. And then one of them, for example, is the deformed wing virus. So you're a bee, you happen to get that virus. When you eventually hatch, you got enough strength to crawl out with your varroa mites attached to your body, usually in the neck area. You crawl out of your little egg hatch there, and your wings are deformed. So you might try and flap them, but you can't fly because you need perfectly formed wings to fly. So you can't go and fetch any nectar. You don't get fed. The bees your sisters are not going to feed you because you're a dead loss. They'll simply wait for you to die, and there are undertaker bees that will cart your body out. So that's a fairly quick end. If you haven't got wings that work, you can't fly, you don't eat. So with the bees, I looked at this lot and I thought, well, I'm an engineer, I'm not a beekeeper, but I might be able to add something that the beekeepers have not tried doing. And it turns out commercial beekeepers have no data. They don't work with data. They are not modern enough to work with data. And by data, not even pencil and paper. They do everything by memory.
Yeah.
Very few keep paper notes because a beekeeper of note, commercial beekeeper, could have 10,000 hives. So he's going to have a number of staff looking after that. Actually, anecdotally, I came across an article about a year ago when I was raising the pre-seed capital from the accelerator in Hong Kong. And the timing of this article was actually absolutely perfect. It was a beekeeper, the biggest that I'd ever come across so far. He had 92,000 colonies in North Dakota in America. And his words in this article were, it was autumn 2018, so around about August, September 2018. He sent his staff out, 35 men in beekeeper suits, to go and examine the bees. Go and have a look at them. And come back and tell the boss, how the bees are looking. Are they healthy? Are they sick? Is there a problem? How many of them did you have to do something to rectify a problem, etc., etc.? So they went out and they came back, and a few months later they reported to you. And his words were, the bees were looking healthy. They were awesome. And because of my early experience in electronics engineering, I didn't have any money for an oscilloscope or a voltmeter or a test meter or anything like that. I had to design something and then make it work by process of elimination, like your immune system works. That's how my early electronics was done, because I didn't have any test kit. As soon as I started making things that were working, I turned that into money. I made light dimmers, which I sold to friends and family. I made 100% gross profit on that, so it was small numbers, but it gave me enough money to buy a test meter, a volt ohm amp meter, or a test meter, multimeter. Now I could actually read real values of volts and amps and ohms. My knowledge took off again, and about 2-3 years later, I'd moved on from building light dimmers to building hi-fi amplifiers. I had found I had a sweet spot for really good, clean sound, and so I built myself an amplifier, and I used to play vinyl records and cassette players into it because I love music. I love good quality music. And then I was still at school. One of my friends said to me, "Hey, can't you build one of those for me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I can." Now that was a big ticket item for me. It was the equivalent of about $300. So for a child at school, I built it for $450 and I sold it for $300, roughly.
You were talking about the bees in America?
Yes.
Yeah.
So essentially what happened with this guy is he basically was using the wrong instrumentation, just like me when I was a kid and I didn't afford the test equipment. He was using the wrong equipment. He was using 2 eyes and a visual cortex with all his 35 staff members. That's what they do. They stand in front of a beehive and they do a visual hive inspection. They lift up frames of brood comb and they look at it with their eyes.
And they say it's okay.
And they say it's okay. You tell me, can you look at something and say you've got a virus or something? You can't see the virus.
No.
It's particularly poignant today because COVID, you have this asymptomatic. So it doesn't matter how hard you look at the person, you can't tell that they've got it.
You have to test it in a lab,
so We can't. We know this. Any doctor will tell you. You can't look at somebody and say, oh, he's got that virus, or he hasn't got that virus. You've got to do blood tests. There's blood work involved.
Yes, exactly.
Or bodily fluid, saliva can give you some indication too. So I realized they're using the wrong instrumentation. So I set out to design a beehive that's got instrumentation built into the walls, IoT electronics to look after the little CPU and some data communications, either Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. And we pull the data out and we pass it into our cloud servers where we've got machine learning. And we've taught the machine learning to have a look at the set of data from a particular hive and tell us what's going on. Give us an indication. So if it's a green light next to that particular hive number, everything's fine. No need to look at it. Leave the hive alone. Everything's fine. If there's an amber light, you've got 3 days to get to the hive, Mr. Beekeeper. Send one of your staff out. You've got 3 days. If you leave it more than that, colony will die. If it's a red light, then you've got 24 hours. You need to send somebody out here, now, today. And even then, you only have an 80% chance of rescuing a hive with a major problem. So some of the major problems that you come across will wipe out a hive if you don't attend to it immediately. You've got to go there and sort it out. If the queen bee dies, the hive doesn't sort of disintegrate in 24 hours. That'll be an amber. Go there and sort it out. But no, today, without this system, our BuzzCloud system, they have no idea which beehive needs their attention. So they can't triage. So they're just going serial fashion, one after the other, do more inspection, find a problem, fix a problem, move on. Meanwhile, 10 kilometers over there, the colony that they could have saved is died. It's dead. It's gone. Nothing. Sorry, that's it. It's over. They just don't know. They don't have that management information. So we provide them very accurate and very high value management information. But we've kind of moved on from wanting to rescue the bees that are in beekeepers' hands because we don't think there is enough time for us to do that. Following the research that we've got and the figures and the statistics that we've got, we think that the bees in nature have died out. We've got pretty hard evidence for that, and I'll go into that in a moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So all the honey that we eat nowadays is all from like beekeepers, bee farmers?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, that's sad. Yes. Okay.
So the FAO, the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, said in 2010, they think there were approximately, they did a census, and they said, the figure we think is reasonably accurate. We think there are 100 million hives under human management. Now, using FAO data and a little bit of common sense, and clever people, far more clever than me, extrapolated that and said, well, if there are 100 million under human management in boxes, what we call beehives, they're probably close to 900 million out in nature. Now, this is in 2010, so 10 years ago. These figures are quite old. We've seen very strong evidence that the bees out in nature have indeed died. They are pretty much dead. Not 100%, but probably close to in excess of 80%. Here's why. Here's how we can make such a bold statement. If you are a crop grower, okay, you're a farmer and you grow a crop that needs pollination. In the last 5 years, just in the last 5 years, you've had to do one of two things if you want a decent yield. So the yield is the amount of fruit or crop you get. You've had to do one of two things. Either become a beekeeper so that you've got bees to pollinate your crops, or if you really don't want to do that because it's a lot of hassle, a lot of learning, it's not easy, etc., then you sign a contract with an existing beekeeper who's got 10,000 or 20,000 bee colonies under his management. And what we've seen is this exponential rise in pollination service revenues, not just for the fancy products like almonds in Central Valley in California. That's just the largest pollination event on the planet so far because it's farming monocrop at such scale. They actually require every single beehive in the United States. So if you're a beekeeper in the United States with more than 1,000 hives, you'll have a contract and you'll get paid if you bring your bees to Southern Valley, Central Valley in California to pollinate the almond crop. It's about 2 weeks in mid-February. So that's just one really specialized crop. If you're a crop grower and you're growing fruit and vegetables that require pollination, you've either become a beekeeper, otherwise you don't have a viable crop, or you hire a beekeeper's bees just to pollinate. This has got nothing to do with honey. Honey, it turns out, in the whole picture, honey is completely worthless compared to the value that the bees give us in terms of nutrition through pollination.
The service, yeah.
That's it, in a sentence.
Yeah.
So I try and steer all my conversations away from honey. If you ask me, do I like honey? Yes, I do. Could I live my life without honey? Absolutely. Would I like to live my life without honey? No. Could I live my life in health without nutrition? And the answer is plain flat, no. We need nutrition. We need a number of nutritious foods so that our body has the right elements and trace elements and vitamins and all the other things our bodies need that we can digest and benefit by that. That's what's at risk if the honeybees actually do die out. So the evidence we've got that the 900 million have indeed died out is anecdotal. But if you're a crop grower and nature was just pollinating it as it has done for the last 10,000 years, why would you ever pay a beekeeper to bring his bees? You wouldn't.
Oh, that's the reason.
Throwing your money away.
Oh, okay. Because there's no more wild bees for them to grow crops. That's why they hire the beekeeper. Okay, I get it. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the general public doesn't know this. Very few people are aware of it. And of the people who are aware of it, very few people think it through deeply enough to realize that this is a major threat to human food security. So the United Nations, we've mentioned them once before, we've mentioned them again, they've got their Sustainability Development Goals. SDGs. Yeah, so we fall in line with SDG 2 and 3, food and nutrition for people, for everybody. And it turns out that by changing our business model and saying, okay, the bees that are in beekeepers' hands in large numbers, commercial beekeepers in rural areas, we're not going to save them. It's a multi-year, almost 2 decades of down at about 40%, 50%. That beekeeper I mentioned earlier in North Dakota, when he opened his bees up in early February 2019, so last year, he found that he only had 50,000 left.
Before how many thousand was it?
92.
Wow.
Yeah. That's an eye-opener, isn't it? Yeah. Oh. So, and bear in mind, he said his bees were looking awesome. They were healthy.
Oh my God.
His words.
That's terrible.
So, they're asleep at the wheel, essentially. The beekeeping community is asleep at the wheel. They're just doing the same thing and doing it more and more and faster and hoping it's going to, well, in 10 years it hasn't worked. It's still minus 40, minus 50% losses. So you take any sum of money, if you're a financial fellow, take any sum of money in your mind, your net worth, take 40% off it. Do that 2 or 3 times and tell me what you've got left. Not much. Not much. Couple of years, 2-3 years of 40% year-on-year losses. You've got front pocket change. You've got a few noisy coins. You've got no more notes left. That's what 40% over 2 or 3 years does. 40% over 10 years has taken that 100 million figure down to an estimated 40 million. At the maximum, 40 million under humankind, human management. We don't think they can be saved because we can't reach the beekeepers because they are so old-fashioned. Very few of them are actually understand.
So your first device was meant to help the beekeepers, right? But now you have changed, right?
Yes. Yeah. Now we've moved on, and we also noticed that many cities in Europe and indeed in China are investing in urban farming or vertical farming because if you farm horizontally, you need more loads and loads of acreage, whereas in a city you haven't got that because it's too expensive, but you can farm vertically. The plants don't mind growing on top of each other. You can chuck LED in there to get the right wavelengths, mixtures of wavelengths of light. That's all done. Yeah. They've done this. This is not new science. Yeah. There are people who are actually making money of it. In Europe, I know of a company called InFarm. They're spreading out their crop growing vertical farms in the cities across Europe as we speak. They closed $100 million off Series B money in March, April last year. So they're doing extremely well. They're also, all the vertical farmers have kind of got to where they know they've got a business and they can produce leafy greens like lettuces. They can produce a selection of herbs. They can produce microgreens for the high-end restaurants, etc., etc. But you know what they can't produce? How about any food that needs pollination? Any crop that needs pollination?
Okay, like almonds, like what you talk about. Right. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So we're looking at setting up our business, focusing our business on providing pollination as a service. So if you make that into an acronym, it's PAAS, PASS. Pollination as a service, what we do is we sell a beekeeper hive or we rent a hive to a man and his wife living in a high-up apartment, say on the 30th floor. They put it on their balcony, or if they've got a flat roof in Europe, there are many flat-roofed apartments. You go up onto the flat roof, it's all safety guards and you can't fall off. Put your beehive on top of the roof and connect it to the Wi-Fi. Then we monitor it. We've got the monitoring. And if everything's fine, you hear nothing from us. If our monitoring says, say, something really simple that happens sometime, not often, but if it happens, you want to be on top of it. The queen is dead. We can pick that up with great ease. That's been done many years before we started looking at this. The academics were doing that more than 10 years ago. We know how to pick up if there's a queen that's laying eggs or she's dead.
So your device will be able to automatically pick that up, and through the internet and through the whatever Wi-Fi or 5G or whatever, it will send the signal to the server and notify the owner, right? Yeah.
Correct. There's one little thing. That's that. You've got it exactly right there. But in Germany, which is our target market, we're actually going to sell or rent the beehive to a man and his wife, our customer. And at the same time, we're going to introduce them to a beekeeper in their city. Because all the cities in Germany have got loads and loads of beekeepers. Yeah. I went and spent the summer last year in Berlin. There's 7,000 beekeepers.
Wow, that's
in
a lot.
Berlin.
Yeah.
Part-time, but they look after 1, 2, 3, maybe 7 or 12 at the most hives each. So 7,000 is a big number. It's a number of people. So we've got a list of them. And when we introduce our customers to the beekeeper, the cloud system sends a text message to their appointed beekeeper and to them. And all the owner has to do is arrange a time for the beekeeper to come and service it and sort it out. If the queen is dead, there's a process. The beekeepers know. It's called requeening. They know exactly what to do. But we tell them, this one needs a queen because the queen is dead. Well, that one is going to swarm. Because if you have a swarm, that's a good thing. It means your beehive is healthy, the colony is healthy. That's how a swarm grows and colony propagates. So you get basically, a swarm is where it divides into two, and roughly 20,000 stay in the original house. The other 20,000 will go up to a high place, a street light or a tree, typically, if there's a tree nearby. And they'll make a temporary home there and look after their queen, their brand new queen. Now, she's not fertile. She's just hatched, and there's been a supersedure event in the hive to allow her out. So the old queen will allow the new queen out, and half of the bees, and off they go. The colony that's up in the tree, it's a swarm. You've seen pictures of swarms. They will send out scouts, and they'll look for the nearest, best place that they could establish a permanent home. So if you're a beekeeper, or if you're one of our clients, we'll sell you another beehive. You can basically and next year you'll have 2 beehives and 2 bee colonies. So we're selling it to people because they can make money out of the honey. One beehive produces.
But don't you have to move the beehive closer to the crops in order for the?
Yes. Our beehive is designed to be moved.
Oh,
we can remotely lock the door so the bees can't get out and sting all the kids.
Yeah, that would be bad.
On the roof. Yeah, so we don't want that. It's a little roller shutter door, and it's closed. We close it at midnight. All automatic. And then next morning, the doorbell will go ding dong, and the fellow with the yellow suit on will say, "I've come to collect your hive. Where is it?" And it's on the balcony or it's on the flat roof. I'll take you to it, and he'll disconnect it from the stand that it's on. He'll pick it up, and he knows it's locked. He can check. So the bees can't get out. It's locked. The door is shut. There is no entrance. And he'll put it onto his transport, probably an electric carrier of some sort.
How big is it? How big is it? Is it?
A beehive is it's about 30 centimeters by 50 by 40.
Oh, okay. That's not.
It's designed to be able to be picked up with relative ease by an able-bodied man.
It's not huge. So it's not huge.
No. It's like a big cardboard carton.
Yeah.
So typically, if it's just the brood box, you can expect about 10, 15 kilos, which any able-bodied person, man or woman, can pick up 10 or 15 kilos. It's no big deal. So he'll put it onto his transport. I hope it's electric transport, because that's what we're all about, is reinventing the way we live and work, sustainability and carbon footprint and all that. And he will, when he's got 20 of these in his electric truck, he'll then drive to the urban warehouse where there is a crop which the flowers are just starting to open. And the people who are running the crop, vertical farm, will have booked it online. And they say, all right, we need 15 beehives here. We've got a crop of bell peppers, red, green, and yellow peppers, and they need pollinating. Bring it. And you literally plug it in. We've got a flexible bee entrance pipe that you literally plug the beehive into the growing warehouse. The warehouses are sealed, so they can't get out. What that means is you'll have bees running around and flying around, pollinating your crop. You still don't need insecticides because there are no insects apart from the bees, and you want them specifically for the pollination services that they provide.
How come the crop grower should have their own beehive then, in that sense, isn't it? Doesn't that?
Yes.
Yeah. Shouldn't that make more sense if the crop grower just get their own beehive and then they do the
Yes, but beekeeping is very complex. They'd have to then hire a beekeeper to look after all their bees. Many of them don't really want to do that.
Oh, okay.
This is not a simple job.
Yeah.
Are you aware of the rule of thumb? If you do a PhD, it takes you roughly 10,000 hours, or if you want to learn to play a violin like a professional, roughly 10,000. If you want to become a beekeeper, it's about half that, 5,000 hours. It's still an awful lot of learning and work. Otherwise, if you don't do that, your colony will die in the first year or maybe the second year. If you're lucky, second year, you'll get 2 years, that's it. There are 20 major things that are out there that will kill your bee colony without you even knowing it. You won't see it coming. If you don't know what to look for, you will not see it coming. There are mushrooms, there are beetles, there are viruses, any number of viruses, mostly from the varroa mite. There are microbes, there are molds.
So the role of the beekeeper is still essential in this equation, right? The couple
Absolutely,
still,
absolutely essential.
Yeah.
Absolutely essential.
Okay.
But here's the good thing. Couple of good things. The bees that I told you in human management out in the rural areas, they are sick and dying. We don't think we don't have enough capacity or resources to step in there and make a material difference. Here's the good news. The bees that are living inside cities, in our cities, on this all over the world, they are healthy. They are having swarms. They're doing well. They're not sick. They're not dying. They're prospering. And so that begs the question, what is the difference? Why is it that they're doing well? Two things. Very few cities spray insecticides on plants in the cities. I know Hong Kong does. I can't understand that mentality. I really wish they'd be a little bit more sensible about that, but it's not something I can change. So very few cities spray insecticides on plants and flowers in the cities. So that means when the bees go out, they don't forage on poisonous plants. They're not getting poisoned every time they go and get some food. Then the other thing is, in commercial beekeeping, if you keep a group of hives, you will typically keep 40 to 60 hives in one physical location, so the corner of a field. And you put them close by because you don't want to walk miles between each one. So you put them close by because it's nice and easy. And the bees know they work on pheromones. They know which is their home because they smell it. Subtle differences you and I could never pick up. The bees' sense of smell is enormous. It's like a dog, or even better. And so basically, the bees come home. There's no issue with that. But when you're a beekeeper, and if you don't wash your hands and wash your beekeeping suit and your thick hide gloves between each inspection, you inspect a beehive and you got something infectious on you because there was an infectious medium, a bacteria. We know bacteria is infectious. We don't have to learn this. We know this. But the beekeepers don't know this. They move on, pick up the next one, open it up, and with their infected hands, they stick it in there. What do you think happens to the next hive? It gets the infection. Because they're too close and because there's no hygiene. They don't practice hygiene. So we're going to change that. Already the beekeepers that are in cities, they seem to be a little bit more up the curve. They do actually clean up between visiting one beehive.
So they're conscious about that, yeah.
Yes. Okay. And the results are showing. The bees in cities are doing rather well. They are healthy. So what we want to do is we want to deliver an enormous social impact, a very positive social impact. If you become one of our clients, you're going to be directly responsible for providing your colony or colonies of bees through our company. We will do all the management and all the logistics to a crop grower nearby you, in your city, in the vicinity of your city. And in Europe, that's all over. They're doing that all over Europe. You find crops being growing in cities, in warehouses. And basically, you provide the bees to do the pollination, and the crops that are produced end up on your shelves for you and your community, your family. Eat those crops.
Oh, so it's like an exchange in terms of you provide the bees, but you just let them. Yeah. Okay.
That is like an enormous social impact. Because if you're a beekeeper and you do that, you're actually supporting everybody around you with highly nutritious foods that will disappear unless we succeed. If we don't succeed, I don't know anybody else who's interested in pollination as a service. Because the pollination as a service, which is running in the hands of the commercial beekeepers, that's coming to an end. When the bees die out, there will be no more pollination as a service. So we can see that coming. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off in cities, make partnerships with people like InFarm and others who are doing vertical farming. They're all on the cusp of saying, we've got this working, we're actually making money, but we can only grow fresh greens and fresh leafy greens and a few herbs that don't require pollination and microgreens. And it's all very great. It's lovely. It's really well done. We know they all want to get into growing the more nutritious crops, the crops that our bodies need to build a healthy immune system and to build health in our youngsters and our future generations. We can't hand over a world without nutrition because that's a dead world. You can't live properly in a healthy manner unless you have proper levels of nutrition. So this is what we're doing. The social impact angle is what keeps me working late.
Yeah.
I'm loving what I'm doing.
Yeah. How long did it take for you to build your first MVP for the hive?
For BuzzCloud, it was on the back of 4 years of research. So I didn't start the MVP, but I did 4 years of research to acquire some domain expertise. And it was domain expertise not to become a beekeeper. I didn't want to become a beekeeper. There's no reason for me to become a beekeeper. But I essentially had to learn a lot of what the beekeepers know to fully understand the nature of their problems. So I didn't cover off, I mentioned the Varroa mite. We went into some detail on that. The best thing that the beekeeping community does is this chemical called oxalic acid. You can buy it over the counter. It's freely available. Oxalic acid is in our food chain. It's in very low dosages. So when you get this oxalic acid, you put it into something that resembles a smoker's pipe. It's got a little battery and a little heating coil. And it heats up the white crystals and turns them into a vapor. When the vapor, you put this underneath the beehive, which is infested with Varroa mite. These fumes, white clouds of chemical fumes, go through the beehive. And you can search on YouTube or wherever you wish to look. You can find videos of Varroa mite being killed by oxalic acid. It works amazingly well. It kills it. So you'd think, well, why is this such a problem? Well, the problem is it only works on the mites that are, they're called phoretic mites. The mites that are attached to bees that are walking around, adult bees that are walking around on the honeycomb, tending their babies or making honey. The mites that are in the sealed wax cells along with a bee egg, the chemical can't get in there. So it's completely ineffective. When the bees hatch, they are covered in Varroa mites. Next bee that hatches, has it got mites? Yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. It doesn't matter how much oxalic acid you pour into this thing, it's completely ineffective, but that's the best the world has come up with. So part of the research, I spoke to beekeepers in Eastern Europe, so fairly far Eastern Europe, and they said to me, you know, what we do is we heat up the brood colony to 42 degrees Celsius.
The whole colony?
The whole colony.
Okay.
And I said, why do you do that? And they said, well, it doesn't affect the bees at all. The bees can take their own body temperature up to 80 degrees. So 42 degrees isn't even a warm afternoon.
Yeah.
And at 42 degrees, the Varroa mite dies.
Oh.
Now, here's the good part. Not only the phoretic mites die and fall off, and that you can see YouTube videos, but the mites that are inside the wax that are sealed, if you take it up to 42 degrees Celsius, they also die.
Oh.
So the next time the worker bee opens up her little sister's wax cell to clean it out, she'll clean out the dead mites, give her little sister something to eat, and close it.
So in other words, your device do that as well? Heat up the whole colony? Wait, so let me get straight. Your device is able to have that open door thing, is be able to move, and it's be able to heat up the colony, and it's also be able to electronically monitor the colony situation, and then be able to wirelessly communicate with a server. Wow, that's a lot of engineering in one device.
There's quite a bit of engineering, but it's not. None of it is rocket science. None of it is complex. None of it is difficult. It's all stuff which any electronics engineer can do.
Wow, that's quite impressive.
But so the fact that we can heat up a beehive automatically. Now, I don't know if you've driven a car recently, and you've got auto cruise in the car. You flick a little switch, and it's doing, you know what I mean, 60 kilometers an hour. When that came out 30 years ago, it used to surge. So you go from 60 kilometers an hour to 70, and then back down to 50, and then up to 64, and then up to 70, and
sine wave.
So the auto industry actually said, hey, we're going to have to do better than this. And they came up with a thing called process PID. I can't remember exactly what PID is. It's a software algorithm that's been out for about 20 years in the open public domain. And it's used for exactly that sort of thing, where you need to take some metric, in that case, vehicle speed, up from, say, 30 or 40 kilometers an hour to exactly 60, no overshoot. And PID does that. It's software which we know. You don't even have to write it. It's understood. It's in the public domain. You can just use a PID controller function. And so for the beehive, if you do heat it up too much, that's catastrophic because the wax will melt. The baby, the brood nest will disintegrate. You'll have a mixture of honey, lava, wax, and bees with honey all over their wings and they can't fly. So it basically, if you heat it up too much, you kill the whole hive in one go. But with a PID controller, we can take it up from this is something which you may not know. The bees actually thermoregulate their brood nest to 34 degrees. It's awesome. Just awesome. Insects. And they've nailed it. 34 plus minus half a degree C. So they do that. Genetics plays a big part in that. Which bees either warm up the hive if it's too cold or cool it down if it's too hot. In layers determined genetically by the queen when she fertilizes an egg. So that's just an awesome insight into the world of insects. But basically, with a PID controller, we've got a ceramic heater at the bottom of the hive. We put a little bit of electrical energy into it. It heats it up, and the PID controller doesn't let it go above 42. Cuts the current. That's it. Not more than 42. And the curve basically comes up to 42 degrees, and you've got 42 degrees. We keep it like that for a few minutes so that it soaks all the contents of the colony. Every little cell gets up to 42 degrees, no more.
To kill the mice.
And we've got a program, we call it the VDD. So the Varroa destructor is the full Latin name or the full entomologist's name for this Varroa mite. It's called the Varroa destructor. We called our program VDD, so it's Varroa destructor destroyer, and it works. You can eliminate Varroa mites 100% just by controlling the temperature. But you've got to be careful with it. You can't do it with
So is this function like software controlled by the people who own the beehive? Yeah.
Yes, it's software controlled by a little IoT computer.
Oh, okay.
Tiny computer.
Oh, okay. So they can also detect mice as well? Is it?
No, we can't detect mites, not yet. When we've got more live data, we are going to be able to detect whether there are.
So how do you know when you should increase it to 42?
Oh, this is quite simple. Good question, but the answer is extremely simple. The Varroa mite has become so successful as a result of commercial beekeeping. There are so few beehives on this planet that aren't infested with Varroa mite.
Oh, so you have to be consistent.
Interesting.
Oh, okay.
It's not interesting. They've all got it.
Okay.
So we are going to run it on a regular basis, and then we're going to work out. We will teach our deep learning and machine learning systems to tell us the difference between a hive that has got no Varroa and a hive that is infested. We haven't done that yet. That's what we're going to do later this year. We'll pull that data out, and then we can say if we detect Varroa mite, run the program, run VDD, Varroa destructor, kill it. Okay. We don't want it. It's not good for our nutrition.
Excellent.
It's a threat to our nutrition.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a beehive, but it does some interesting things that beekeepers don't know about.
Yeah, that's great. This functionality is very integrated, so that you don't have the people who bought this. They don't have to know a lot. They just have to know some other beekeeper, right, to take care of it for them. Yeah. So that's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm loving what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Thoroughly enjoying it. Now with COVID, it's become extremely quiet. It looked like there was no market for bees, but it turns out there is investment appetite. So I'm looking at taking on investment to get the company to the next stage.
Yeah.
We will most likely break into Germany because I've done the most research there. And the German public don't need any education on this. They know everything I know. The man in the street knows this. The number of beekeepers in Germany went from 40,000 across the whole country to 120,000 in the last 3 years.
Wow.
Now, I wish I was.
Wow.
Yeah, 3x. Yeah. I wish I was responsible for that, but that would be completely disingenuous. I was not responsible for that. But it's going in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. They all want to become beekeepers.
So that's why you want to start in Germany. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if you're a young couple and you want to become a beekeeper, you look at it and you look at a sort of a notional pie chart of your life, and you've got your wife, and you've got your parents, and you've got your work, and you maybe still be studying. And well, where are you going to get 5,000 hours? You can't. And many of them get to make that decision and say, well, we just haven't got the time and the resources to do that. We just can't do it. So that's why we've designed our business model so that it means you don't have to become a beekeeper. We will introduce you to a beekeeper who lives in the same city as you. and we'll give you a choice of 2 or 3. You choose the one you like. Let us know. We put that into our systems, and when our monitoring systems find something wrong with your beehive, we will tell you a text message over 5G or whatever, and we'll tell the beekeeper. And all they have to do is arrange a convenient time to go and sort out whatever the problem is. That means you will have a bee colony, and it also means that after in the first year you'll probably get involved in collecting a little bit of honey. So that's fine. That's another upside. A healthy beehive in the city will produce more than 50 kilos of honey. So it's about...
per year?
Yes, per year.
Oh, okay, 50 kilos. Well, that's quite a lot, isn't it, already?
Yeah, 50 kilos is a hang of a lot. You wouldn't be able to eat that. You and your wife, you couldn't possibly
You have to give it to people.
Yeah. You're going to give it to your family and friends. And when you get tired of that, you're going to sell it. So it's money for nothing, because the bees make it for nothing. All right, you pay for the jars. But it's money for nothing. But we're also going to end up paying them there's going to be a pro rata share, a profit sharing arrangement with them, with the individual customers as far as the pollination service. So I haven't got the final figures, but let's say the beehive owner, if he owns it or if he rents it from us, he'll get 80% of the pollination revenues, and our company will take 20% as a service fee for the pollination revenues.
So has this device been produced yet, or are you in the process of producing it?
I've produced 2 what we call minimally viable products. They are sitting in 2 different MVPs. They're sitting in 2 different locations in Germany and Berlin.
Right.
They are drawing in interest. I get the occasional email because I've got all my contact details on that there. We have got late stage MVP. We're looking at getting into production over the summer. I intend producing 100 beehives. Yeah, it is exciting. I'm going to produce 100.
So that's why you're in Shenzhen, right? So because you want to produce it, right?
Absolutely. For the production.
Yeah. Okay.
So those beehives will go with me to Germany. I'll assemble them in Germany. I'm not going to assemble them here because that's too risky. Assemble them in Germany, and basically I'm looking for 2 B2B customers. So a B2B customer would be somebody
business to business,
growing vegetables in urban vertical warehouses. That'll be a perfect customer for us because we know they want pollination service. They just don't know that we're around the corner and we're ready to provide that to them. Cost effective, managed. Efficient management, and it's effortless. They'll simply fill in a web form and say, we want 200 beehives at this location on this day, and we need them for 10 days. They will know because their crops. They know what crops flower for what number of days. They are experts in that. We're not.
So in other words, I can expect to see your product by the end of this year, around in Germany, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's very cool.
Yes, certainly. Yeah.
Initially, I thought this interview will be just about startup. This is so serious now. This is a serious problem. You have me worried right now. I mean, right now I'm worried. I'm worried about our world, man. I'm worried whether if I have a kid, will the kid ever see a bee in the future? Will they ever have honey or almonds? Because those are important things. Wow.
Yeah. Then I've done my job. I will rest well tonight. I've got one more person to understand the situation that the world's food is in.
Yeah.
Our food is at immense risk because the wild pollinators have died. Yeah. Otherwise, crop growers would not be paying money to get beekeepers to pollinate their crops. That to me is the hardest evidence you're ever going to get. Yeah. Because you could never count the number of bee colonies in any case. But as you can see, I wasn't born 20 years ago. I'm an old fellow. So in my life, I've traveled long distances in hot and arid countries many, many times. And when you go for more than 1,000 kilometers, actually more than 500 kilometers, your windscreen gets covered in bugs.
Yeah, it does.
Not so. Yeah. Not today. You can do 2,000. Well, you can't do 2,000 a day. You can do 1,200 at a sensible maximum if there's speed limits that you're willing to obey. 1,200 kilometers. And you might find one bug on you, if you're lucky. The insects have gone, my friend. They've gone. They're not coming back anytime soon. Yeah. The large number of insects, and this is the foundation of our living systems. Those insects, they do things, they process things that we rely on, all the way up the food chain. So next up, what do you think? Some birds eat seeds, don't they? That's fine. Other birds eat insects. No insects? What's going to happen to those species that used to eat insects? They are going to be busy dying out.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, the food chain is broken, so the next step.
The chain is broken.
Exactly.
It is actually broken. It's not going to break.
Yeah.
It's not busy breaking. It has broken because the insects at the bottom of the food chain have been crushed. They have gone extinct. What's left is not an interesting number. Nobody can count it. It's not an interesting number. We know it's happened because otherwise crop growers would not be forking out their capital, their profit, to get adequate yield by paying beekeepers to bring captive colonies of bees to pollinate. We know that. Okay. And those service revenues have gone up exponentially for the last 5 years. Started off $20 a hive. Now it's $200 a hive.
Wow.
In fact, in 2018, the year that I approached the accelerator in Hong Kong, in 2018, the amount of money the American beekeepers made per beehive went just below $200. The amount of money they made per beehive from pollination revenues just broke $200.
Yeah.
So it's like two lines. One's going down and the other one's going up.
Yeah.
So financially, the beekeepers are okay.
Yeah.
But this is what I don't know if you have heard of some stock trading terminology called a dead cat bounce. If you have a stock price that falls off the edge of the cliff and it goes from, say, $1,000 per share to 20 American cents per share, that's fallen off the edge of a cliff. You're not going to get your money back. But very often you'll find it bounces a little bit up, maybe $1, $2, $3, $10, and then it dies out and there's just nothing. It's natural stock dynamics. Yeah. So it's in the stock market, it's called a dead cat bounce. What we're seeing now is dead cat bounce with the bees that are the revenues that are coming into commercial scale beekeepers. The honey revenues are going down. All the other revenues, there are about 5 or 6 lesser revenue streams. So from beeswax, from royal jelly, from venom, a number of other 5 or 6 things you can make money out of if you really focus on it. But the bees make for nothing. Propolis is another big, very expensive one, relatively expensive one. So if you look at all those things and you realize that actually this exponential increase in pollination service revenues, it is going up, but it's actually a dead cat bounce. It's going to go down because the bees are dying. What's left is going to die. I don't think there's any chance that it's going to pull through in anything like meaningful numbers. So the number of hives under human management, I think, is going to go down to the low millions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 million. Yeah. Over the next year or two. And then we'll realize, okay, now we've got nothing to pollinate our crops, apart from what we're doing with BuzzCloud. And that's why it's important that we get this thing going. We've got limited time, but we do have healthy bees. There are healthy bees. And that's the bees that are living in cities already. It's quite bizarre, isn't it? Quite unexpected. Who would know?